Well, hello, everyone. It's great to see so many people here. Welcome to the Community College STEM Network webinar. My name is Michelle Van Noy, and I'm Director of the Education and Employment Research Center at Rutgers University, and I'm also a PI on the CCSN. And just a little bit of background on the CCSN. The Community College STEM Network connects and supports researchers and practitioners in conducting and translating research on how students navigate STEM pathways into evidence-based practices, programs, and policies. So we have this ongoing webinar series that you're part of today, as well as several research projects and partnerships focused on understanding how low-income academically talented students navigate pathways in STEM fields. We also have a series of research to practice clinics and proposal writing workshops and that are intended to help support folks in the STEM area in community colleges. We're really excited to have you here today for this webinar on lessons from the field on successful community college STEM grant proposals. And so one of our leaders of the proposal writing workshops, John Krupczak, will be moderating a discussion today. Before I turn things over to John, just wanted to mention to everyone that we are going to be recording the webinar, and it will be shared with everyone to watch later. We also ask that you keep your cameras off for the duration of the webinar, but we encourage you to ask any questions or provide any comments throughout the discussion in the chat, and we'll be answering those throughout the presentation. We're very grateful for Deborah Bragg, who's been helping us to organize this webinar series, who will be monitoring the chat and helping to bring up any questions, but feel free to chime in at any point in the chat, and we'll look forward to the discussion. So without further ado, I will turn things over to John to get us started and kick off this webinar today.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Great. So first, welcome everyone to our webinar on lessons from the field on successful community college STEM grant proposals. My name is John Krupczak, and I need to mention that unfortunately, due to the government shutdown, Tom Kim, the current program lead on the STEM program, is not going to be able to join us today, so he sends his apologies, but the webinar will proceed as planned. As of now, there's no changes in the STEM program, the deadlines, or any of those sorts of things. So assuming that the government shutdown is of finite duration, STEM will go on. So we're going to proceed as planned in Tom's absence. So our agenda for this afternoon is first some introductions of the panelists, and then a quick overview of the NSF STEM program. Some of you may be familiar with it already, but we want to get everybody on the same page there. And then our panelists will describe some of their own experiences in the STEM program as community college PIs, and then mention a little bit about our grant writing workshop series that the CCSN is sponsoring to help community colleges prepare and submit grants to the STEM program. And we'll be taking your questions right along in the chat, and then hopefully have some time at the end for extended Q&A. Okay, Michelle mentioned a little bit about the network, so I won't repeat too much of that, but the idea is to promote the success of STEM students in the community college setting. That's the reason that NSF sponsored the network, the CCSN network, supported it through grant funding in terms of creating and sharing resources into the community colleges to support the success of STEM students. And this webinar is one activity of the network. It includes the grant writing workshops, literature reviews, webinars, community partnerships, case studies, research fellowships. All these things are aspects of the CCSN, and some other of these might be of interest to you. We really encourage you to join and get involved in the network. So these are the principal members of the leadership team of the CCSN. Michelle and Dave Brown from the California Community Colleges Foundation is the other PI. Okay, so getting into today's webinar. So first I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves. But so my name is John Krupczak. I'm currently a professor of engineering at Hope College in Holland, Michigan. My background is as a mechanical engineer, but I was also a program director at the National Science Foundation for several years. And during that time, I was one of the co-leads of the STEM program. And since leaving NSF, one of the things I've participated in is in grant writing workshops to help institutions prepare competitive proposals to the STEM program. So I'd like to ask Janice to introduce herself, give us a little bit about your background and your role at Flathead Valley.
Thanks, John. I'm Janice Alexander at Flathead Valley Community College, which is up in northwest Montana by Glacier National Park. And I am a professor in chemistry with degrees in chemistry and forensic science. And I am also serving as division chair for science and engineering. We have 3 co-PIs on our STEM grant. So I am one of those 3 co-PIs, and we are in our 3rd year of our grant.
Great. Thanks, Janice. Pete.
Yeah, I'm Pete Bransness, and I am the what's called the program lead for the computer engineering for Klamath Community College. Klamath Community College is in South Central Oregon. It's a very rural area, and yeah. So my background is a database administrator. I have a master's degree in database and business intelligence, and I've been teaching for 15 years. Our grant has just started, so we just got our award on August 1st. So we are going through the preliminary process of setting up all of our supports and getting our students ready for to select for scholarships. So we're in the beginning stages.
Great. Thanks, Pete. So before we get rolling, I'm going to actually drop out of share for a second because I want to put in the chat a bunch of links that I'll be mentioning, and just so that everybody can have them, let me just drop these in the chat. So these will come up as we go along. Don't want to scare anybody, but there's your reading assignment. Let me jump back into share here. Okay. Great. All right. So first, a little bit about the NSF STEM program. So we're assuming that some of you may know about STEM, but some may not. So the goal of the next few minutes is just to provide an overview about the NSF STEM program. And also, I will mention that if you've heard about it or been involved in years ago or in the past, the program has evolved and some of the key requirements have changed, as recently as last year. So there might be some new information, even if you're somewhat familiar with STEM. Okay, so the official name here is the NSF Scholarships in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. So hence the STEM acronym. The current active solicitation is NSF 25514, just came out a little bit less than a year ago. The main goal of STEM, so directly quoting from the solicitation here, is to enable academically talented low-income students to pursue successful careers in promising STEM fields. This is the solicitation itself. Key point here is the deadline for the next submission is March 3rd, 2026. Okay, so getting into some of the key details. So there's 3 program tracks that you can apply to in STEM. Track 1, Track 2, and Track 3. Track 1 is called the Institutional Capacity Building Track. The maximum budget is $2 million over 6 years. This is intended for institutions that have either never had an STEM proposal or have had one longer than 5 years ago, with an emphasis on the capacity building, getting programs up and running, getting things going at your institution. Of this $2 million, at least $1 million or 50% must go directly to scholarships. The others can be spent on other support activities and things that we'll get into. Track 2 is called the Implementation Project Single Institution. This also has a maximum budget of $2 million. At least 60% or 1.2 million must go to scholarships. Now, any institution can submit to this track. And then there's also Track 3, a consortia of multi-institutions, $5 million over 6 years. at least 3 million in scholarships. Now, the CCSN and our grant writing workshop is focused on the track 1 and track 2. Track 3 is generally a major institution, multi-institution proposal. So we're focusing primarily on the first 2 tracks. Okay, so the key thing about the funding is that so why doesn't it all go to scholarships? Why 50-50 or 60-40? And the key point that NSF is making here is that while scholarships are important, they're not necessarily sufficient to help promising low-income students complete STEM degrees. So a portion of the budget can be used for other types of student supports to help students actually complete degrees. Okay, so an important definition. So what STEM degrees are eligible? So NSF in this solicitation says these are the following STEM eligible disciplines. So any disciplinary field in which research is funded by NSF, including technology fields associated with those disciplines. So for example, biotechnology, chemical technology, engineering technology, in addition to the main disciplinary areas like chemistry, mathematics, engineering, computer science, and so on. Now, there's a few that are excluded. Any clinical degree program is excluded. So medical degrees, nursing, veterinary, pharmacy, physical therapy, these are excluded from the STEM program. So no clinical degrees. And also business school programs are also excluded. So anything that's going to have a business association with it is not eligible. The STEM program has an important goal of enhancing the nation's STEM workforce. So directly quoting here from the solicitation, the program seeks to increase the number of academically promising low-income students who graduate with STEM-eligible degrees and contribute to the American innovation economy with their STEM knowledge. NSF is particularly interested in supporting the attainment of degrees in fields identified as critical needs for the nation. It's up to the proposer to make a compelling case that such a field serves a critical need in the United States. Further on in the solicitation, the proposals should demonstrate demand in the regional or national workforce for professionals with those degrees, the potential to address long-term workforce needs of the United States, and evidence of positive job prospects within the STEM workforce upon graduation with an undergraduate or graduate degree. So important aspect here is that while any STEM field that NSF supports is eligible, the proposer needs to make the case that there are jobs available in that field. Even if you're intending to support students who are going to transfer, say, transferring from your institution to engineering, bachelor's degrees, you still need to make the case that, well, once they complete their transfer program, there's jobs available. NSF doesn't want to graduate low-income students to a workforce situation where jobs aren't available. So part of the proposal is making the case that there's jobs available in your region or the nation for graduates with these degrees. So students supported must be in one of the following tracks. So on track to receive an associate's, bachelor's, master's, or PhD in one of the supported disciplines, or transfer from an associate to a baccalaureate degree program. So it can be either students who are in a terminal track at a community college or any institution, or students who are intending to transfer. Who's eligible? So students must be U.S. citizens or meet this fairly stringent criteria as admitted aliens. DACA individuals are not eligible for support. They must be enrolled at least half-time in the program, your program. They must be an eligible STEM major. Students must demonstrate academic ability or potential as defined by you, as defined by the project. So one aspect of the proposal is defining what you're going to consider to be academic ability. And B, low income as defined by your institution and demonstrate financial need. So students must have some financial need and qualify as low income as defined by your institution. NSF has no official definition of low income. Scholarship details. So the maximum that any one student can receive is $15,000 per year. How is financial need determined? So it's determined by the cost of attendance for your institution minus the student aid index that comes from that student's FAFSA minus any other grants or scholarships. So NSF intends STEM to be a last dollar scholarship. Financial need, the cost of attendance can include or does include living expenses. So even if you're not a residential institution, you can include a student's living expenses wherever they're living as part of their need. Students, projects are expected to meet all unmet need up to the 50K max. So if a student has, say, 13,000 in unmet need, and they're an STEM student, they should receive 13,000. If they have 18,000 in need, you could give them up to the 15,000. And your program is intended to be such that you bring a student into your STEM program and support them through completion or transfer. So provided they meet any continuing requirements like GPA eligibility and those sorts of things. Project management. So the STEM project team should consist of the PI, principal investigator, who is a faculty member currently teaching in one of the STEM disciplines, or an administrator who has experience teaching in the last 2 years. So that's the principal investigator, the project lead. The project should also include a STEM administrator, someone at the department chair level or above, as a member of the team. And then any other additional team members you feel are necessary. A project can have up to 5 PIs and co-PIs, so 1 PI and 4 co-PIs, but any number of senior personnel, so various people that may be part of your project team. So typically, generally think of the team as the PI, 4 co-PIs, and some number of other associated team members. Getting near the end here. So one aspect of STEM is the required supports for the students. We said scholarships are essential, can be essential, extremely important, but students generally need some types of supports to help increase their likelihood of graduating. So there's 3 categories of required supports that you determine when you prepare your proposal. So one is mentoring by faculty. So the students who are considered, call them the STEM scholars, must receive some sort of mentoring by faculty in their discipline. A cohort experience, so the opportunity to associate with other students with similar interests and circumstances. So typically the STEM scholars will form a cohort. And then some type of population specific supports. So some supports and interventions to help increase retention and graduation rate that are based on your needs analysis specific to your targeted population of low-income students. So these funds can help you provide supports that you might not otherwise have that are particularly relevant to the needs of the students in your group. So all the details of these supports are left up to the project team to determine and describe in the proposal. So these supports can include, complement, and be integrated with existing student support activities at your institution. The project budget is there to help provide funding for these types of activities. And finally, the supports should be based on evidence-based practices. So should be informed by what's known to be effective for the various types of groups or types of supports that you're envisioning, and you should generate some sort of information that you can provide back to the community. So this is the evidence-based evidence generating. So when all is said and done, you will have found out something about how to support talented low-income students and disseminate this back to the community for everyone's benefit. Okay, this last one is an important to note that the idea of the supports are supports that meet the needs of your particular student group. And this is based on some data that you've developed through some sorts of needs analysis specific to your targeted population of low-income students. Okay, wrapping this up. Student success, focusing on the STEM workforce, support students to degree completion or transfer. They should eventually be joining the workforce in some area where there's jobs available. Academic talent or potential as defined by you. A low income with demonstrated need as defined by your institution. Track 1 and 2, $2 million max with different amounts of scholarships. And your support should be based on the best practice evidence and generate some information that might be useful to the broader community. Okay, before we move on, I just want to check to see if there's anything I can answer in the chat here before we move on. Looks like we're good. Yep, we're going to share the slides afterwards. So briefly before turn things over or involve Janice and Pete, STEM and community colleges. So on behalf of Tom Kim, I want to encourage community colleges to consider applying for STEM. Now, NSF does not publish officially the categorization of awards. However, all the awards abstracts are made available, and the AAAS has gone through the database of the over 600 currently active STEM awards and determined of these 600 plus, 77 awards, or about 12%, are held by community colleges. So community colleges are successful in gaining STEM funding and are particularly encouraged to apply because, as you can recognize, 12% is really underrepresented when you consider the number of STEM students in the community college environment in the country. So to help encourage community colleges to apply, NSF is supporting things like our CCSN and our grant writing workshop to help make it possible for community colleges to prepare competitive proposals to the STEM program. So community colleges are particularly encouraged to apply, and there is a certain number of already successful community colleges, including Pete and Janice's. So let's get into our main event here on some lessons from successful awards to your colleges. So I'd like to maybe ask Janice to start off and tell us a little bit about your program at Flathead Valley, what disciplines are involved, and what particular types of student supports you may have thought to include in your program, and a little bit about how things are going.
Great, thank you. Our state, Montana, is different than some other states. This means that we award a generic Associate of Science degree. We do not award them in disciplines. And this meant that as part of our grant proposal, we needed to work around the piece of the STEM disciplines because we don't actually award in specific STEM disciplines. And so we know that we are serving students that are headed towards a degree in chemistry or engineering or mathematics or forestry or biology or geology. So really we cover computer science, we cover most of the STEM disciplines. We focused specifically on student transfer. But because our award is simply the Associate of Science degree, The one place I would say it gets a little tricky is we have to look out for the clinical fields. And so since if someone wants to be a pharmacist, that's a clinical field or medical school, we do need to do just a little bit of screening to sort out, are they really aiming for a bachelor's of chemistry or a bachelor's of biology degree, or is their sole aim vet school or med school? Our program has been able to take about 8 to 10 students a year. And we developed our cohort around what we call the core experience. We developed 2 courses. They're both 1 credit courses. So the first semester in the program, students take a core experience. We also have a core experience that's for undecided students. And so basically, we were able to piggyback as part of the grant to use this other 1 credit course for first semester students that was optional for them and redesign it specifically for STEM. And so it focuses on understanding what transfer is and how to prepare a 4-year transfer plan, basic study skills, and we also wove into it wellness. So some of those time management skills, mental health pieces, etc. And then second semester, they take an LS 151, which is a STEM literacy and research class that's a credit. And then, of course, we have the faculty mentoring, and we have some scholar meetings throughout the year, and we've connected it with our weekly STEM colloquium. And our students, after their first semester, where we have some mental health built into that COLS class, for all their future semesters, they meet one-on-one monthly with a licensed counselor for just some wellness support. So those are the basics of the program. I think I saw a question in the chat about the science education piece.
Yeah, do you have, I'm not sure about science education, just thinking that there is the NOISE program, which had previously been where all education students have been funded. So I'm not sure what the current support is on that. Janice, do you have any science education students in your? Yeah, my thought would be probably to clarify, since it is kind of a gray area, would be to email the NSF Tom Kim when they reopen and see if science education is supported as a STEM field. I think there's still the workforce requirement. Great. Okay. So let's ask Pete to jump in and tell us a little bit about the basic aspects of your program, the disciplines you support, how many students you're envisioning. I realize you're just getting started, but what do you have planned, and what were you able to put in your proposal?
Yeah, so we have a track 1, which is for first time proposals. Our degree areas are cybersecurity and networking and computer engineering technology. Now, the cybersecurity and networking, that is what we call our terminal degree. In other words, we train you to be an IT technician in 2 years and then go out and get a job. And we've been real successful in placing our graduates. Our computer engineering technology is a transfer degree to Oregon Tech in their computer engineering program. So we have, in our proposal, we put in that we're going to have 23 unduplicated persons over 6 years. Now, we'll probably have more, but most of our students are Pell eligible, almost all of them are. And so when you have that many students that are Pell eligible, you have a wide range of what their needs are. And so that's what, using the formulas that we were given, that's what it worked out to. The supports that we're looking at is we're looking at building a summer bridge program that will and we're going to want to develop that into a course that has a STEM student focus, and that this is going to replace a course that we currently have that is called College Survival that all incoming students have to take. But that particular course is not STEM focused, it's kind of general overall. And so we believe that there is evidence to show that with STEM students, there is a different need for them that has to be addressed. The other course that we're looking at putting in is what we call a first year transition, which will include visitations to work sites and colleges. And that will include employers, alumni that will be working with us on this, that we've got letters of commitment on. And so we have an internship program for the second year students. And we want to have something for the first year students that would prepare them and give them an idea of what it is that they're going to do. So one of the things that we know from our surveys that we did prior to this, as we were developing our proposal, was that a lot of our students, you know, they were coming in and if you say, well, what do you want to do? And they say, well, I want to do something in computers. But as you probably all know, there's a wide range of things that are done in that particular area. So this gives students a better chance to be, you know, to understand what they're getting themselves into. So we think that's something that we want to put into a course. And then, of course, we have an extensive amount of mentoring built in that, again, as John mentioned, is required, but in the program. But of course, we'll have faculty mentoring, which will take more of a team approach instead of the individual academic advisor only. We'll have second year students that are going to be peer mentors. And then, of course, we're going to be working very heavily on a cohort approach in a couple of different ways. As you know, community colleges have a tendency, I guess you call them to be commuter schools that don't necessarily have a lot of campus life, et cetera. So what we want to do is start developing those relationships between our students. And we find just in our, you know, again, in our previous research, that students that are more engaged, especially with other students and faculty, tend to do better. So we want to encourage more students to fall into that pattern.
Great, great. Thanks, Pete. Now, you mentioned that you did some surveys to help determine what your high areas of needs were, and you came back with the idea of providing this first year opportunity for students to actually get out and see firsthand some opportunities with actual companies. And extremely important that it wasn't just a crazy idea that you thought up. It was something that was informed by a survey, and it may have been that the survey may have reinforced some ideas that you had, but you were able to kind of confirm your intentions there with the survey. That's great. That's a really very important aspect of this data-driven approach to putting your proposals together. Janice, I wonder, since your project's been running a couple years now, if you could share a little bit about, you know, how it's going, particularly things that you were hoping to get going through STEM. Has it panned out? And be honest with us if you had some challenges, and we'd like to hear about those too.
Overall, everything's going amazingly. We were concerned in the beginning because it's a last grant, last dollar scholarship. We were concerned about enough students applying, and that hasn't been an issue. In fact, we've definitely had more students applying that qualified for awards than we've been able to give out. When we applied, the grant was a lower amount, and the scholarships are maxed at $10K a year. And I think that would have been okay if things hadn't changed a few years ago, but we are one of those places where the cost of living went through the roof throughout the COVID pandemic and has not gone back down. So definitely, if we were able to offer $15K, we do have students that would qualify for that amount. Our startup, our grant we had hoped for an August start date, and we were excited to get the grant. NSF let us know that our start date wouldn't be able to be until at least November of that school year. And so we chose a January 1. We figured if it was in the middle of November, we weren't really going to get anything done between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we chose a January 1 start date. That did mean we are on a very short timeline to gear up to get everything in process to go for the first year. So I would say that was definitely a challenge with the marketing, getting the word out, getting the application process and the web page designed, and all of those pieces to actually be able to have our first cohort that next August. The classes have run very smoothly. The students enjoyed the classes, and the classes are having a great impact. The students mentioned repeatedly one of the things they really like the most over the few years. We've actually got our first cohort. Those students are now in their third year, and they love the fact that they are getting to know each other. For us, right, they're from different disciplines, which is also nice. And they actually feel connected to other STEM students, and they definitely had cited that as something that they felt like they were missing. So that has worked really well. I'd say the internal mechanisms of the college are where we had some challenges and some things to work through across that first year. Probably not a surprise. One of our co-PIs, which we did very purposefully, is our director of student services. We felt that having one of the co-PIs be the head of student services would really help us leverage all the student services side of the house that's so critical to really having this grant work the way that it's meant to. And that has definitely helped us quite a bit. Our Vice President of Academic Affairs has also stepped in quite a bit. Sometimes people say yes, and they are very happy to agree to pieces that go into the grant. And then when you come back a year later and you say, hey, we actually need to do this, they suddenly aren't sure that they have the time, or they might feel a little differently. And so it really helped us to have the Director of Student Services and the Vice President of Academic Affairs to just have some kind conversations here and there with a few folks about these pieces of the grant that had been committed to and that they were going to go into place. Once we got through that piece, it's been fine, and everything is running very smoothly. The students enjoy the wellness counseling that they have one-on-one monthly. Just really all the pieces of the grant have been moving well, and we're actually starting to look forward to putting together a next phase grant.
Great, great. Good to hear. One question I had is at the time your proposal went in, which was already a couple of years ago, the idea of supporting wellness was not widely known. So you were really at the forefront of incorporating wellness and counseling. Want to just comment a little bit about how your team thought to put that in, probably going back 4 years now.
Yeah, so there were a few factors. We did do, we created a survey that we sent out essentially the same survey, but the flip side, to the STEM faculty and to STEM students at the college. Again, this is where our Director of Student Services was helpful, as she sent that survey out to any students that were in STEM areas attending the college. And it really was looking at what their goals were, short and long-term goals, even daily goals, challenges, daily academic challenges, personal life challenges, staying in school challenges, all of those areas, and also their habits in some of those critical areas. So that survey really brought up the mental health piece across the board from the students. We also had a Flathead County Community Health Needs Assessment that had been done. And Kalispell and Montana has a very high suicide rate. It's twice that in the country. And so we that information was very helpful. And we had recently in the Valley at that time, uh, some prominent teenage suicides that had made the news quite a bit. So all of those pieces, I would say, really fit together for that mental wellness.
Great. And the grant was able to give you some funding to get that going and sort of accelerate, which you might have been able to do otherwise, but was sort of a key enabler there, would you say?
Yes, the grant definitely was a key enabler, and it's made a big difference for the students. It seems to be consistent with support in that area. We have another mental health counselor on campus, not the one they do their one-on-ones with, that some students, depending on their needs, may transition over to in addition for additional services. But just having that piece of support, we've made sure in data gathering to, of course, have more of the narrative survey answers. We've done some focus groups in order to gather some of the information, and we are consistently seeing an impact from that. The grant, I would say, one of the things with the grant is I don't think we would have thought through this whole process otherwise and put all of this together. And it's really helping the STEM students. It's bringing, I would say, a lot of the campus together. And the grants allowed us to leverage making these pieces happen. I think if we would have just said, hey, can we figure out how to do one-on-one wellness counseling with our STEM students? I think the answer would have been no.
Right. Thanks. Isn't it great when something works out? Maybe as we're getting a little farther along here, maybe ask you guys to reflect a little bit on the grant applying process, and maybe Pete could, maybe since you've been recently gone through it, maybe describe a little bit about how you manage the application process, and maybe the positives and negatives of applying for STEM. I know that uh, you've had some challenges in getting all the way through, so maybe telling the audience the unvarnished truth about applying to STEM.
Yeah. So yeah, I probably am really got a real expertise on this because we applied 5 times for this grant. So, and we got disqualified twice because of some errors that we made. And so, but one of the things that I would say to anybody that's doing this for the first time is what I said to my grant officer, that when we submitted our first grant, I said, first time we've submitted, I said, hey, if we don't get this, I'm going next year. I'm going to go do this next year. And the reason is because we looked at our program, and our program has got a lot of real strengths. We're doing really well in a lot of areas, and our graduates are highly successful. What the problem was retention, and that's a problem in community college. And so we wanted to take this on. And when we looked at this grant, it's everything that you really want. It's got the support, it has support, for support, student support, which is needed for retention. And then of course you have the financial piece. So if our students are worth it. I mean, if you're going to work in this, this is a good place to, if you're trying to tackle these problems, what I'm trying to say, this is a good way to tackle it. The thing too about going through this process, we learned a lot about our program. We learned a lot about our students by doing the research, doing surveys, doing all the things that you have to do to put a program like this together. We, it gave us a more detailed picture of what's going on with our students. So that in itself was well worth going through the process. The thing about it too is that when you know, when we looked at, as we're going through this, and we looked at some of these things that, that needed to be addressed, we were going to do it anyway as best we could without the support, because we didn't have the grant awarded to us over those years. But we realized that it was going to be the best we were going to do is minimal. In other words, we weren't going to be able, we were going to be able to make, some positive changes, but we weren't really going to have the impact that we really wanted to have. So that's why I would highly, first of all, I would advise anybody that's, especially community college, to apply for this grant. If you ask me, absolutely. And then the second thing that I'd say is, prepare and think about it if you're doing it the first time, to go through and resubmit, because it's a very competitive grant. But you can take the feedback that you get from going through the process, and then you can go back and you can refine your grant and try to address those issues on that. So yeah, I think that's pretty much about it.
Great, thanks. It's certainly a testament to your persistence to go through that many reapplications, although hopefully also with the benefit of our workshop, you won't have quite that much of a hurdle in the future. But Janice, maybe you want to comment on the same thing about just the whole application process, or what you went through as a team, how you managed to get everybody on board. What would you advise as far as people who are considering applying for STEM, possibly for the first time?
Definitely some of the important pieces were, and I think this goes to what Pete said, I was determined we were going to apply. And it did end up taking us an additional year. We did not apply in the first cycle. We had an external evaluator that near the end of the process was unable to work with us anymore. A few, hiccups here and there. But I think that extra year helped us. So we applied once and we received the grant, but we took 2 years we had thought we were going to, spend 1 year in the process and then apply. And we spent 2 years in the process and then applied. I think that extra year definitely helped strengthen what we had put together on campus. I definitely think it was very smart decision of us to include as part of the co-PIs people from other areas of campus that would be integral to the full support for the grant. So folks in student services, financial aid, some of those other pieces. And definitely, picking the movers and the shakers, the choir, as some of the main folks to work forward on this. Finding that best concept for your institution. For us, it was the mental health piece that really helped ground our grant and direct all the work in our grant at that one focus point. Yours and David's workshops, John, I felt were instrumental in really supporting us and helping us throughout the process, whether it was questions around budget or questions around impact, all the way through. You guys were amazing. And that made a big difference with the ability to attend the workshops, and then every now and then to have a one-on-one or ask if you could just read through something and give a little bit of feedback. So I thought that was incredibly helpful, and I would definitely suggest people take that opportunity.
Great, thanks. So as we're getting actually near the end, I want to make sure people have opportunity to ask questions of either about STEM in general or about either of our panelists. So give everyone an opportunity to put a question in the chat so that Janice and Pete could clarify or elaborate.
John, this is Deborah. Jennifer earlier asked about whether the literature that's being cited as evidence needs to be part of the What Works Clearinghouse. And my comment and observation, having been part of these grant writing teams, not like you, John, but a little bit, my observation, it'd be very hard for community colleges to rely only on What Works Clearinghouse literature, as it's very, very challenging to get research reported there, and there is very little on community colleges, unfortunately. So the recommendation is use as strong and rigorous research as you can find as evidence to back up your proposal. And I'd like you to comment on that, but I also want to let folks know I put a link in the chat to the research briefs that our team is writing on some of these critical aspects of the student experience and student success programming in STEM that we think might help with proposal writing. But what's your comment about, John, what is the literature that needs to be in a proposal to back up ideas?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The literature can be a little bit hard to come by, and even less so for community colleges. I mean, the NSF's idea was to have people just go out into the literature and be informed by what's previously been done, rather than reinventing the wheel yourself. So I think the requirements are somewhat flexible, and like any other proposal, you try to find the best sources, the best evidence you can, and even if you can't, then that maybe indicates you're on the right track. That okay, this is an important area that maybe we can help contribute to some idea
Yeah.
of what works. So yeah, I would agree with you, and also the CCSN has tried to help address this problem by Deb and other members of the team doing some synthesis of research results and pointing the community in the direction of some key findings to help facilitate that idea of accessing, evidence-based practices, particularly relevant to community
Mhm.
colleges. So, I would say, as Deb mentioned, the best sources you can find, and it's actually getting better all the time now.
That's true. We have a question from Jeremy Lemaster. I don't know, Jeremy, you can unmute. Happy to hear from you or anybody else here at the end.
Sure, I can unmute. So I was just kind of curious if anyone had sort of elements of like working with workforce development, non-credit programs or certificate. We have a lot of kind of STEM related non-credit programs, and I'm just curious if those were elements at all as sort of like building up for students for the purposes of this proposal.
Yeah, so for STEM, the students have to be in some kind of degree track or transfer. So certificates wouldn't qualify themselves. If the certificate is, if you can make the case that it's part of an associate's program that's a combination of certificates, then you could make the case. NSF ATE program will support certificate students, but STEM, you've got to be associate's track or transfer, or that it's part of a sequence. That's where the cutoff is for STEM.
Anyone else want to jump in with a question? We still have a couple minutes here.
Maybe while people are thinking, I will like to share a little bit about our workshops that's
Yes.
coming. Just let me get share going here. Okay, sorry about that. So we have some proposal writing workshops starting soon, actually Friday. Like, yeah, no time to waste here. So these workshops are coordinated by myself and Dave Brown, who's recently retired, a 25-year veteran of community college system instruction in California. And the workshops are intended to walk you through the proposal writing process, starting from scratch. We meet roughly every week with gaps for the holidays and have 12 sessions. And we go through all the parts of the proposal, so things that have been mentioned, like determining the eligibility requirement, helping to define what your student needs are, helping with the budget, definition of low income, cohort structure. And the idea is that walking your team through this on a weekly basis with gaps for the holidays ending in early February, so you're ready to submit by the early March deadline. So these are the 12 sessions, and you can find we've got good feedback so far from our participants, and we'd encourage you, if you're interested, to go to the link and type the apply now and get your information in so that we could potentially get you going by Friday. Now, the workshops are recorded, so you don't absolutely have to be there in person every week. But as Janice mentioned, a lot of what we do is troubleshooting or clarifying. People may have ideas. The workshop participants in some ways kind of form their own cohort where someone from one institution will mention a question or issue they have, and then someone else will realize, oh yeah, we have to think about that too. So we generally find that the in-person participation is optimum, but we do record them and support the asynchronous participation as well. Before we run out of time, I also encourage you to respond to our evaluation, but we do have also 2 upcoming network events. We have our research to practice clinics. So the idea of the research to practice is doing an in-depth presentation on some aspect of STEM success. So this one coming up in a couple of weeks is career preparation strategies in STEM fields. So at the clinic, experts in this area will provide an overview of what some of the key findings are and point the participants to key literature for more information. And then we also have coming up in December a webinar that Deb is organizing on community college leadership support for STEM education and STEM scholarships. So this is going to be a panel of at least 3 community college presidents led by Annette Parker, who is a former community college president, on the top of the pyramid. How can they help out with this process? See, some things have popped up in the chat here. Okay, so let's see.
We do have a question from Jim Rabchik.
Yeah, Jim.
And Jim?
Janice or Pete, do you want to jump in and answer about the screening of candidates, how that's been working?
I started answering in the chat because I figured we were out of time.
Go for it. We got a minute.
So we had to work with our financial aid office just even to get straight, like how to calculate what qualifies and not, because of the pieces of you don't necessarily look at loans, you don't necessarily look at work study, to make sure that they were doing calculations correctly. The other piece was that a lot of our students don't file the FAFSA. I think that's probably pretty common at community colleges. So we chose not to make that a requirement when they filed the application. So we actually get their application, and then we at the back end reach out to them one-on-one to support them and encourage them to file the FAFSA and to help connect them with our financial aid office, get them set up with a one-on-one meeting in financial aid so financial aid can help them file the FAFSA. So definitely a great question.
Thanks. So I guess now we're out of time. I would encourage everyone to join the network. If you're interested in the proposal writing workshop, get over to the CCSN webpage and apply now, or trains leaving Friday afternoon, 3:30 Eastern. So see some of you there. And thanks so much, Janice and Pete, for taking the time and willing to share your experiences. Or, really appreciate your helping out the community this way. Thanks, everyone.